I thought I'd do a quick little edit of one of these trees just because it's quite quick and easy. Usually I can do this in about 7 minutes or so. So what I do is get this image ready by doing a curves layer. So I've got that curves layer, I'm going to bring that right down. I'm going to darken the edge of the Posie so that when I bring the image across, I'm not going to have any of that texture around the edges. So I've got my white brush at 100%. And I'm going to paint that around the edge of the baby, and then I'll mask that back off so we don't have any of the textures coming across. So if it's not quite dark enough, what you can do is just go to your curves layer and pull it back a little bit more. Then what I do is reduce the opacity and use my white brush, my black brush, at 100%, and then come back in with that black brush and then bring it, erase it off all around the edge of the baby, because I don't want that darker, but I want all of the Posie a little bit darker. There we go. So basically baby's got a really nice warm colour cast from the brown Posie. And I'll just get all of that off and then make sure it's all off there. See how we're going. And then just going nice and close, because I do want some of the edges of that, the fibres on the baby's edge there. So I don't want to lose all of those. So now that I've got that, sometimes I use the backspace key to make sure that I have erased everything off. So I've got my black brush. I'm just going to erase off that extra bit there because I've missed those bits. But I love the backspace key for just double checking before you move on to the next step. So what I'll do then is I'll save that as a dark version because I might just want to go back to the original. I'll save that in my final edits. There we go. And then I will flatten that image, and I've already prepared a backdrop. So all I've done is in one layer I have grabbed the green channel in hue and saturation. So you grab hue and saturation, grab your green layer, your green level, and then you can hue and saturation across, and then you just grab your green. You move this toggle across here until you get your green the way where you want it. So I've just pulled it up to a certain area there where it's grabbing all of the color of the green. So just play around with your levels and what have you. So this one here, I've just grabbed the red channel and I've changed that to blue. Same thing, just grabbing the channel, red channel, and then I've just moved that across like that, and that should change everything there. So what I'll do now is I'll just flatten that image that I'm happy with that. I've got my baby image that I'll drag across. So I'll just change the size here. I might just reduce the opacity so I can see how we're going size-wise. So what I might then do is bring that opacity up. I can then mask it off, and I'll invert the mask so that I'm just painting the baby back in with my white brush at 100%. So that should have all that baby image all in there. You can see the reason why I changed the backdrop was so that I had some nice tones that matched the wrap and the bonnet that the baby's wearing. So one of the things that you can also do is I'll do another layer of the background, and that was just Control J, and then I might liquefy that internal leaf a little bit just to make it bigger for the baby. don't be afraid to do that. I always make sure it doesn't look too stretched, so I just make it so that the baby can be a little bit bigger. Yeah. There we go. And his little ears are going to pop over the edge, but that's fine. I might just, so free transform, Control T, and then I'm pressing my shift key to make sure that the perspective of the baby isn't moving. Now what I've done is I've got my eyes, the baby's eyes are nice and level across the horizon. Sometimes I change them whichever way kind of works with the body shape and the leaf. So that one really is sitting nicely in that leaf. So what I'll now do is come back in with my, come in close with my black brush, because that's going to be erasing off my baby image. So I'm down at 10% and I'm going to erase in all around the edge there. That's my brush at 10%. That way I'm just taking a lot of the edge off, but I do want to keep some of the edge of that fluff there. So I don't want to take it right up and take off all that edge, because I don't want a flat edge to the baby. I want to be able to keep some of that fluff. What I find is you really want to get that side cleared up so that you don't have a lot of dark on that side, because that's where the light's hitting. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my white brush. I'm going to come in a little bit closer, take it up to 100%, and then I'm going to go around the edge. So you can see some of those fibers are still left there, and this is bringing the baby back to 100%, and you can see again, you can see some of those fibers going over the edge. So this is painting in the baby image. So I'll just do my backspace key, make sure I've got all of the baby in there. So I'm going to come back out now. I'm going to show you how the baby's kind of sitting in there nicely. I could even make the baby a little bit bigger if I wanted, just to fill in that. Because I do think the baby does look nice and cute, very big in the image. Sometimes that might be a bit too big. It's fitting nicely into that, that leaf. So what we also then have to do is create a sense of shadow. Now the light's coming from the left-hand side on the baby. You can see that that shadow around there is quite, it is shot in natural light, so that shadow is a little bit softer on that side. So what I'm going to do is bring in a curves layer. So I'm going to bring that exposure down. That's underneath the baby. So I'm going to mask it and invert that mask so that I can paint it back in where I want. So I'll bring in my brush at about 18%, and I will start to add a little bit of shadowing that's going to be suggesting the baby is there. So basically what I do is kind of movements that are very similar to the shape of the baby, and then I want to darken down that side, a little bit of the whole image. So let's just turn that on and off. There you go. You can see how that's kind of giving that nice sense of light across that side of the image. Sometimes I will also bring up the exposure on the light hand side of the backdrop, just so that we're enhancing that sense that light is coming in the direction that it's coming on the baby. So I've masked that layer off. I'm now going to use my white brush at like 17% to pop a little bit of light over here on the backdrop. Not necessarily always coming from that side, sometimes the light can just pop over here. So it's going to sort of suggest that that similar light is hitting the backdrop that's hitting the baby. So now I'm going to come in and add some of my baby layer, so that now all I've done now is the two curves layers underneath there, and then the light layer over here, popping that bit of light over there. So I'm going to come back into my baby layer and then just bring some of that Posie back in. So The reason why this is nice and easy, it just allows me to do a little shadow that's going to be in the shape of the baby. Now what I try to explain to some people is that when you've got textures underneath, you want to have your shadows kind of in and out of some of those textures so that they're not just a big scooping shadow. The shadow does suggest that it's in what it's in. So if this baby was in this leaf, there'd actually be a little bit of shadow falling across that side, and this would be quite shadowed because it looks like it's kind of down in something. So you can see how the shadows, I'm just creating the sense that there's also irregularities on the leaf, not just a big shadow that's quite solid. So I'll do that there. And then we'll come out and have a look and see how that's looking. As it is, it definitely needs some shadow there, and just pops of light, a bit more shadow there. So what I then will do is I can do a dodge and burn layer on the top of the baby now to add a little bit more shadows on the shadow side. So what I'll do is layer, new layer. I'll do soft light, fill, then I will grab my black brush at about 6%. I'll come in and then I will add a shadow around here. Again, this is where you kind of go in and out of some of the textures just so that it's not a solid line. So can you see how with this one we're just adding the sense that there's a little bit of a shadow, because if baby was in there you'd get a little bit more of a shadow. It basically creates a sense of depth and 3 dimensions by shaping your subject like that. So I let a little bit of shadow along this little bonnet. This is one thing I think some people tend to miss a fair bit is shadowing not just the backdrop but the baby as well. So for here, see this part of the leaf, I just want to add a bit of shadow on that side, because if the baby was in there, that leaf would be shadowing some of that side of the baby. So I'm going to come back out now and show you what that does. And it gives a really nice 3-dimensional feel to the baby. So I'll just add a bit more there. Again, you don't want to come too dark so that it's really just a solid black. You want to have some detail in those blacks. That's what I'm aiming for. Still some detail in the blacks. You can still see some of that texture there. I love the way this texture's come up beautifully. Now that I'm on the top of the baby, I can pop a little bit of light on some areas that I think might need a little bit of enhancement. So the light could be hitting this little bow a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I'm dragging light across that bow so that it pops the bow a little bit more. Sometimes I do the edge of a bonnet just so that it pops the edge of the bonnet. I'll go inside the bonnet and give a bit of a drop shadow just there. Now I'll show you what that looks like on and off. Just giving that nice depth to the image. So what I'm going to do is now come back out. I'm feeling pretty good about that. There's still a little bit of detail in that leaf. So what I'll do is just I'll probably flatten that now. I'm at the stage where I'm just doing some finishing touches. Usually I come back and just see how the image looks when it's small like this. And I might do another dodge and burn layer and just do some little tweaks on top of that now. So normal, soft light, fill. I've got my dark brush. There we go. And I'll go down to about 5%. What I'll do now is just come in over the image and just kind of give a sense that the light's just coming from the top. Nice, even light. There. So I'll show you what that just did. Really minor, but again, it just really enhances that the light's coming in from one angle there. So I might just saturate that a little bit more around the blues. So I'll pull that saturation up. And I'm going to paint that on. So I'm going to mask that off. And then paint it on into that area, the blues, so it's nice and rich blue. Alright, that is it.